Hi there, I'm Bonnie McCaffery, and thank you so much for coming back this month for another VidCast. I've just flown into the Chicago airport, and my friend Maggie Weiss picked me up and brought me over here to her studio. Wow, what a great studio space. You are so lucky. This is wonderful.
Well, it's incredible. It's a converted school, and I have high windows and lots of light.
It is wonderful. And I see behind us we have lots of great quilts that you have done, I assume, in this studio space. Tell me about some of the quilts and the processes that you do for your quilting.
Most of the quilts that are behind us are what I would call pop art quilts. Pop art is a type of art that takes something from our everyday lives and elevates it by isolating it or repeating the image. And as you can see, I've printed it in different colors. I've printed it on different colored fabric.
Now we're going to take a look at the thermofacts in a minute, but you teach other classes as well. Tell me about some of those.
I sure do. I teach something called pop art quilt blocks, which is also along these same lines. And I also teach something called sheer bliss, where we create lots of interesting layers with dyed organza and all kinds of other silk fabrics, and we tame the wonder under so that it doesn't bleed through the organza, and it creates a wonderful layered effect on the pieces.
I love the interaction of shears as you layer them one on top of the other. That sounds like
it's exciting.
It is exciting. So let's take a look and see how this thermofax process works. What kind of equipment do you need to do this?
Well, the main thing is a transparency maker. And we can put a piece of film in with a photocopy and have a silk screen made in about 4 seconds. So there's two other things we need in order to make one of these.
Okay.
The first is the rhizofilm that brilliant man invented in the 60s.
And what does the rhizofilm do?
Well, it actually is the silk screen itself. We run that through the machine with the photocopy.
Right.
Which leads us to the photocopy. It's really important that it's a photocopy. It cannot be an inkjet. It can't be a photograph. It has to be a photocopy machine that uses carbon in its toner. So everything we have is right here in front of us.
Okay.
And this is a very good high contrast photocopy over here.
All right.
Which you can see. And just in case it would open up the screen where there's little specks of carbon toner, I have whited those out.
Oh, okay,
so
I see that. Yes.
And now it's a nice clean image.
All right.
And here's a piece of rhizofilm.
All right.
And we're just going to lay that right over so that it's centered on the right, left, and top and bottom.
Okay.
And we're ready to go.
Is there a right side, wrong side?
Good point, Bonnie. Yes, the smooth side is facing down. And we tuck the paper in, and it turns on the machine. It draws it through, and in about 5 seconds, it comes right out. Probably less than 5 seconds.
There we go.
And we know that it's worked because they're stuck together. I'm only holding the paper.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're stuck together.
All right.
And they make a very satisfying sound when you pull them apart.
All right. Let's hear it. Love it.
So now we're ready. What's next is that we want to find a way to safely apply it to this frame.
Okay.
And the way to safely apply it is to wrap all the edges with our durable, wonderful duct tape that's good for so many things.
You know, we women can use duct tape just like the guys.
Yes.
It's good stuff.
And to great effect. So what we have here is the image framed with duct tape. Let's do that satisfying noise again and take off the photocopy. And we can see again that the dull areas are different from the shiny so that it's open in those areas.
Okay.
And we've stretched that piece onto a frame. And on that frame, I peeled off the paper from the two-sided tape.
Okay, yes.
And stretched the image over it.
Okay.
We're now ready to apply paint.
Okay, we have now set up with all the stuff we need to paint these screens onto the fabric. Tell me what you got here. What do we need when we go to the paint process?
Okay, we have to consider the fabric that we're using.
Okay.
We have a piece of white fabric down and a piece of black fabric.
Okay.
I'm going to center the screen.
Cotton?
Oh, it's 100% cotton.
Okay. Does it have to be cotton?
It does not, because we're using paint. It could be any fabric at all, because generally paint will stick to any fabric.
Great.
Okay? It helps if it's pre-washed, but it's not absolutely necessary.
Oh, my kind of girl.
So we've got the screen laid down on
right.
one of the blocks. And let's talk about squeegees, though, okay?
Okay.
First, I want to tell you that whatever your image is, it's always important to have the squeegee fit the image.
Okay. And so I see we have some paint out of here. What kind of paint is that?
Well, there's two kinds of paints here. The first one is what's called a transparent color, which is good for all light fabrics. And then the other one is called an opaque color, which is good for dark fabrics. If I were to put the transparent fabric on the dark fabric, it would fade and you wouldn't be able to see the image after it dried.
Right. Now, are these fabric paints?
These happen to be fabric paints, yes.
And this one is Cetacolor and this one's Pro-Chem?
This is Cetacolor and this is Pro-Chem. These
Okay.
are my two favorite paints in the world.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay. All right. Let's get going. I'm going to put a small line of paint across the top of the screen right where the tape is. That should be plenty. It can be about as thick as the width of a pencil. All right. So the image is anchored and it's centered on the cloth. I'm going to hold down that frame with my opposite hand and pull towards me. It's always good to take a breath and exhale as you do this.
Ooh.
Now, just to be safe, I'm going to scoop up the paint and put it at the top of the screen and do another run.
Oh, okay.
Just
to
in
make
case.
sure.
In case my pressure hasn't been even.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to set the squeegee down and take a peek and see if it looks all right. Ooh, it looks wonderful. So I can take my extra paint and put it back in the bottle, and let's see what there is. Et voila!
Oh my gosh, that is
We've got our daisy.
Neat.
The coverage looks a little heavy in the center. I probably could have done with one swipe in this case.
Okay.
But let's move the screen while it's wet and put it right onto the black paint. Sometimes this gets a great effect. I'm not going to wash and dry my screen because these paints are compatible. All right. In this case, the paint's a little thicker, so I'm going to take a spoon and put it all across the top that way. I like to inhale and then exhale as I'm pulling it down. Now it looks like I've got lines of magenta with a lot of orange. So let's see what happens if enough of Bonnie's paint came through. Oh, yeah.
That
yeah.
really looks great.
That looks great.
I love it.
And as the opaque paint dries, it becomes more bright.
Wow, this is a really neat technique. So you could put different dots of color down and have lines of color.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's
Oh my
why I
gosh.
like the lines don't bother me at all with
No.
this technique.
Not at all. Now, do these have to be heat set or treated anyway after they're dry?
There's two ways to set them. You could ignore them for 2 weeks, which is my way. Or
All right, we could set them aside and just admire them on the board for 2 weeks.
That's right. And then the paint's considered set and they can be washed and dried.
Okay.
It's always good to iron them from the back side. And the other way, as soon as it's dry, I would iron it at the hottest temperature for the fabric for 45 seconds or so.
Okay, great. Wow. So let's take a look. I see that this one quilt back here, you have a little boy's face, and I'm amazed at the detail that you can get with the screening.
The screening detail is almost, well, I wouldn't say microscopic, but it's pretty close.
It's pretty detailed, yeah.
And if you get the right lighting in a photo, any photo can be used.
Now, there's a pretty strange quilt back here. What is that quilt, Maggie?
Well, that quilt is called American as Apple Pie, and it was submitted to a show at Cal Poly. The title of the exhibit was called A Tear in the Fabric. She was looking for pieces that were not what they seemed to be upon first glance.
Yeah.
Many people who look at this quilt think, printing presses. But as you inspect it more closely, you realize it's not printing presses. They're actually electric chairs.
Wow.
The colors were chosen because they reflect the skin color of people. And what I love about it is that when you're far away, it just looks like a homey quilt made with homespun fabric in the edges. And when you get close up, it makes you think a little more.
Yeah. Not quite what you think it is it?
Not usually.
How about the skeletons? They look like fun.
Well, that goes back to my love of everything Mexican because that's in honor of Day of the Dead. Have you ever heard of Day of the Dead?
Day of the Dead, yeah.
Okay. Well, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a celebration of any ancestors who have already passed on. So the skeletons is also a good example of using opaque paint on black fabric.
Right.
There's a line drawing of a woman at a spa that I originally came up with for a friend who was having a spa birthday. And I liked it so much I made a sample for class.
Now I'm noticing that she's reversed. Can you flip these screens over to get a...
You are so perceptive. You're the greatest.
Well,
yes.
yes.
Absolutely, the images can be reversed. It's just that they have to be reversed before you put the film onto the frame. So you decide the orientation. Here we have the free floating film.
Right.
And you decide which way you want it to go.
So you would clean it off and then reposition it upside down.
Exactly.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
That's just what I had to do with that one. And then if you look, there's a 4-up image of a gentleman. That's my dad. And he passed away about 8 years ago. And that was one of the photos we used at the services. And it was just such a great picture of him. I managed to manipulate it so that it was just black and white.
Yeah.
And what's fun about that setting is that you can print in black on white fabric, and then I painted with Cetacolor that background. So the black comes through after the paint is dry. I didn't use opaque paint.
And it's not black fabric.
No.
Oh.
So it was white fabric printed with black and then painted with Cetacolor. And if you look closely, there's no lines from the Cetacolor drying, which is really nice. So Cetacolor really is transparent.
Yeah. I bet he's one of the ones we celebrate his life on the Day of the Dead.
You betcha, baby.
Yeah. Oh, Maggie, thank you so much for inviting me into your studio. This has been great, and it's been great to see how you do this.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming so much.
Mwah. And thank you all for coming. I hope you'll come back next month and see what I have for you then. Thanks for being with me.